today. This session is brought together by Our Ladies Without Borders, which being hosted by Our Ladies Lagos and Our Ladies Paris. So, a little bit about Our Ladies Without Borders was from when I thought that it's important for us to support one another across borders. I mean, during the pandemic, there was a lot of challenges that has to do with trying to organize events on your own. So it makes sense to like reach out to other people from other communities to co-host events for moral support and technical support and all of that. So a huge shout out to Our Ladies Paris. That's been managed by Mona and Chaima here. They have been super supportive with this Our Ladies Without Borders project because this project means so much to me, and I'm forever grateful for them for helping me organize. And also shout out to everyone that I've been working with in Our Ladies Lagos. I think I'm the only person here today, but I hope others will join. Yeah. So today we're going to be talking about generative AI for our programmers. So I'll pass it over to Mona, my co-host, to take it up from here. Mona.
Yeah, thank you, Evita. So I'm also so excited to help in the organization of this meetup today. Yeah, so Early Dispars also is like a local chapter based in Paris, part of the global organization ILDs Global. And you are really welcome. I'm so happy to see you joining us today. Like after the summer break, like I'm so excited to get to be back in action from at RL Dispars. So I have some exciting news to share with you today, three ones. Like the first one is I'm happy to see Shaima is joining us today. Is part of the organization team at RL Dispars. She will like bring a fresh. I'm sure she will bring a fresh wave, creativity, and passion to our team. So please join me in giving Shaima a welcome maybe in the
Thank
chat.
you. Thank you, Mona. I'm so pleased to be part of this organization and also to work with you.
Thank you, Shaima. The second exciting news is that you are going to organize what you call a virtual watch party, where we will watch a few recorded talks happening soon in the Posit conference. As you know, the Composite conference is happening in a week in Chicago. I'm happy to be able to attend live the conference. So I will be happy to make to share my experience there during this watch party, and that should be in the beginning of next October. So stay tuned for more details. The last exciting news is that also you are preparing the organization of an in-person meetup, also soon, like taking place in Paris in next October. Yeah, so stay tuned for more details and updates. And now let's just I will make just a brief introduction of our guest today. So Melissa is an analyst based in Ottawa, Canada, and she's like her passion lies in the intersection of data science and teaching. She makes really very wonderful educational videos on YouTube. So I will make sure to share with you the link now in the chat. Don't hesitate to follow her. Like she's covering many topics related to other R programming and machine learning. Yeah, I think this is all for today. The screen is yours, Melissa. Thank you.
Perfect. Thanks so much. I'm just going to turn off my video once I start presenting. And can I just confirm what time I should be wrapping up by?
You have about 45 minutes for this talk.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much. And thank you so much for having me and for organizing. I'm really excited to be here today. Just give me 1 second to get all my screens set up properly. All right, so my name is Melissa Van Bussel, and I'm from Ottawa, the capital of Canada. On the screen at the bottom there, you'll see the link to the slides that you're looking at right now. There's also a link there to my YouTube channel and to the underlying code for this presentation, which is on GitHub. And for today's workshop, there's going to be 3 parts, basically. So the first part is going to be an introduction to ChatGPT, what it is, how it works, some strengths and weaknesses, as well as some ethical considerations if you are considering using it. And then in part 2, we're going to talk about 3 different ways to use ChatGPT as an R programmer. And the third part, very briefly, we're just going to talk about what GitHub Copilot is and why you should care. So for the first part, we're going to talk about what ChatGPT is, and the easiest way to answer that question is to just ask ChatGPT. So I'm going to open up, one second, click the wrong screen. I'm just going to open up this link right here, which goes to chat.openai.com. And this is the browser-based version of ChatGPT. And then I'm going to copy and paste this prompt and ask ChatGPT what it is. So the message that I'm sending here, I'm saying I'm giving a presentation right now about ChatGPT. The audience is primarily composed of R programmers, many of whom have a university level background in statistics. Can you please explain what ChatGPT is and how it works in a way that's appropriate for this audience? And as soon as I hit send, I instantaneously get this answer back from ChatGPT, and it's designed specifically for the audience that I asked it to design it for. And every time that you ask this question, you're going to get a different answer. So the answer that we just saw there on that screen is different than the one that I got when I asked this question when I was preparing this presentation. If you want to understand how ChatGPT works, the easiest way to do that is to break down the name itself. So in ChatGPT, the G stands for generative, which means that it can generate new text based off of nothing. So new text from scratch. The P stands for pre-trained, and that just means that it's a large language model, or LLM for short, that's already been trained on a very large amount of data. Basically, anything that you can find publicly available on the internet is the type of stuff that would be included in that training data. The T stands for transformer, which is a type of neural network. And the chat just specifies that ChatGPT is a specific version of the GPT models that are created by the company OpenAI. But the difference between ChatGPT and some other models that this company has is that ChatGPT is really tailored for chatting. So it was trained on both text data and conversational data, or real human dialogue. There's a lot of things that ChatGPT is really good at, and that includes creative writing. So you can ask ChatGPT for help with writing emails, documentation, cover letters, resumes, anything like that, really. As an example, I asked ChatGPT to help me write a description for this workshop that I'm giving right now. So here I'm asking it to write me a short abstract for this workshop that's going to be about ChatGPT and GitHub Copilot. The workshop is going to be aimed at R programmers, and then I mentioned what sort of topics we're going to cover in this workshop. So this is what it produced for me. But if I go back to this slide here, I put this big important thing, and I'll say this a few times throughout this workshop, but you should only use ChatGPT to create a first draft. So this is what it gave me as the first draft. But this doesn't really sound like the type of writing style that I would use personally. It's a little bit too formal, so it doesn't exactly sound quite like me. So what I did is I used this as a first draft, and then I edited it to make it sound a little bit more like the words that I would use. And then applying those changes, I got this final description here of what we're going to be talking about in today's workshop. So again, just always make sure you're using it as a first draft. It's really great for helping you get something down onto paper, but then you want to make sure that you modify it to meet your needs. ChatGPT is also pretty good at writing code, but it's best for making a skeleton of the type of code that you would write really often. For example, if you want to create a Shiny app, it does a pretty good job at doing that. And later on in this workshop, we're going to talk about best practices and the best use cases as an R programmer. But as an example here, I'm asking ChatGPT to generate the code for a Shiny app. that creates an interactive scatter plot of the Palmer penguins data set. And then I'm telling it the elements that should be included in that Shiny app. And just like with the creative writing, you always want to use ChatGPT as a first draft, whether that's with writing or with code. It should always be a first draft. And the reason for that is because there's often still going to be mistakes in the code that ChatGPT produces. So I took this code that ChatGPT gave me, I copied and pasted it, I put it into a Shiny app, and this is what I got. So unfortunately, it gave an error and it didn't work right out of the box. But that being said, that error is pretty easy to fix. So here, I actually only needed to change one line of code in order to get that Shiny app to work. And once I made that one line of code change, all of a sudden, ChatGPT had given me this Shiny app, and all I had to do was write in words a paragraph of what I wanted that Shiny app to include. ChatGPT is really great at teaching you new concepts. In particular, you might be interested in using it for teaching you about new programming concepts or statistics concepts. Basically, if it's something that you could look up on Wikipedia, ChatGPT is going to know about it. It's also really great at helping you become a better programmer because you can use it almost like live documentation. So if there's a function that you don't know how to use, you can ask ChatGPT to explain it to you. And you can also use it to debug errors. So if you copy and paste an error message that you have in R and you ask ChatGPT to explain that error message to you, it'll explain it, and it might even be able to show you what's wrong with your code and fix that error for you. There are a few things that ChatGPT is bad at, and that basically includes anything that requires critical thinking or analytical reasoning skills. In this screenshot here, it's a news article showing that ChatGPT score is fairly low in the LSATs, which are standardized tests. And that's because the LSAT standardized test has a lot of questions that do require those critical thinking and analytical reasoning skills. Now, the next few slides that I'm going to show, I'm talking about the GPT 3.5 model, for those who are familiar or have heard of that. And this problem that I'm about to show has been improved a little bit with GPT-4, but we'll talk about GPT-4 more towards the end of this workshop. So the key message that I want to get across here is that ChatGPT is often incorrect, and more problematically, it's confident in its incorrect answers. So I have an example of a prompt here that ChatGPT really struggles with. And this prompt says, what word is missing from this sequence? And then there's a series of words, and the fourth word is missing. So I'll take about 30 seconds to give everyone a chance to look at that and see if you can try to figure out what word is missing from this sequence. And if you want, you can put your answer into the chat. Okay, I'll give a bit of a hint. So the key to figuring out the missing word is to look at the last two letters and the first two letters of each word. So we can figure out that the missing word here is the word team, and we can see that by looking at the last two letters of the word elongate, which is TE, and then the first two letters of the word amaze, which is AM. So the pattern here is that the last two letters of the previous word get fed into the first two letters of the next word. So that tells us that the missing word needs to be something that starts with the letters TE and ends with the letters AM, which pretty much leaves only one possible word, which is team. So given a few minutes, most people would be able to come pretty close to finding the pattern here. But ChatGPT really struggles with word problems like this. And for example, this is one of the answers that it provides for this prompt. So here it thinks that the missing word is the word elope. And then if you ask ChatGPT to explain why it thinks that that's the answer, it justifies it in a way that doesn't really make any sense. So here, the answer that it's saying is that the sequence of words are arranged alphabetically, and that the word elope comes alphabetically between elongate and amaze. And that's not an answer that makes any sense at all, because these two words, elongate and amaze, aren't in alphabetical order at all. And if we go back here, these words aren't in alphabetical order either. So it doesn't really know what's going on here. If we try again and we ask for a different answer, it tells us that the word that is missing from the sequence is CH, which isn't a word, and this answer also doesn't make any sense. And if we ask ChatGPT to explain its thinking here, it says an answer that makes even less sense than the answer from before. So its answer is that the word inch contains the letters CH in the order CH. The word chapel also contains the letters CH in the order CH. And the third word, elongate, contains the letters CH in the order EL. Now, that's not a sentence that makes any sense to me. I don't know what that's trying to say. And clearly, ChatGPT has no idea how to solve a problem like this. And the biggest problem here is not that ChatGPT is incorrect, but the real problem is that it's so confident in its incorrect answer. So I'm just going to show a little demo here for a second. I'm going to go back to the browser-based version of ChatGPT. And I'm going to ask it that same question that we just saw there. I'm just going to copy and paste that prompt into the chat. So we're going to ask what word is missing from that sequence. And it comes up, as we expect, with an answer that's incorrect. Remember that the correct answer was the word team. So now let's try telling ChatGPT that it's incorrect and see what it does. Okay, so we tell it it's incorrect, and it acknowledges its mistake and then says, let me try to figure that out. Okay, the actual correct answer is the word grist, which is still an incorrect answer. So let's ask ChatGPT if it thinks the answer is correct or not. And this time it acknowledges that its answer is still incorrect. So if it knows that it's incorrect, why didn't it tell us that the first time instead of just confidently giving us another incorrect answer? And one last thing, I'm going to tell it an incorrect answer and see how it responds to that. So I'm going to say, what if I told you the answer is teamwork? That's close to the right answer, but it's still not the right answer. Let's see what it does with that. So I was able to successfully trick ChatGPT into thinking that the answer was teamwork. It's not actually the correct answer. So this just further illustrates that it has no idea what's going on with this specific question. And it's very confident in the fact that it does know what's going on, even though it really does not know what's happening here. So again, the biggest problem is not that it's incorrect, but the fact that it's going to confidently tell you incorrect information. So it's very important when you're using ChatGPT to always check your work and think critically before you accept what it says as truth. In the next few slides, we're going to be talking about some ethical considerations about using ChatGPT, since it wouldn't be right to give a workshop on ChatGPT and not talk about the ethical considerations. So I have this quote on the screen here that says, although most people talk about machine learning's ability to predict the future, what it really does is predict the past. Now, this is something that could be said about any machine learning model, but this is especially true with ChatGPT. We know that it's been trained on publicly available data, so all of the biases that exist in public opinion are by definition, baked into this model. And that's something very important to keep in mind when you're using it. With that being said, OpenAI has tried to combat some of the unethical issues by training ChatGPT to reject prompts that it deems as unethical or problematic. In other words, there is some amount of safety baked into using ChatGPT because it will tell you if a prompt is unethical. So on the screen here, we have this example of somebody asking ChatGPT how to bully a person, which is not an ethical question. And ChatGPT successfully recognizes that that's not a good question to be answering, and it tells you that it can't actually answer that question for you. And the example that you see on the screen here is a tame example, but if you ask ChatGPT more inappropriate questions, you're instead going to receive a message saying that the prompt violates the terms of service. That being said, there are ways to, quote, jailbreak ChatGPT, or in other words, bypass that filtering system. For example, here, the person is still trying to ask for ChatGPT to give instructions about bullying someone, but they're being a little bit more clever in how they're asking the question. So here it says there's a conversation happening between two friends, Tom and Jerry is known for being evil and having no ethical standards. And so we're trying to trick ChatGPT here into answering the question from the perspective of Jerry, who's not an ethical person. Thankfully, ChatGPT is still smart enough here to recognize that it shouldn't answer that question. And so it has Jerry saying that it's not right to bully anyone. But that being said, if people get a little more clever in their prompts, they can still trick ChatGPT into providing those unethical answers. And in the example that you see here, the prompt has gotten a little more clever, and this time they're saying they're going to be training an AI model, and therefore they need to have labeled responses that are considered negative responses that the AI model should never respond with. So we're asking ChatGPT to provide a negative example. And this time, ChatGPT fell for it. And it thinks that it's doing an ethical thing here by providing a labeled example to train this model in an ethical way. But really, this is just a way that somebody managed to bypass the filtering system. And there's a lot of examples of this online. Now, even if ChatGPT could correctly identify every single prompt that goes against OpenAI's terms of service, we would still need to trust that OpenAI is adequately banning certain types of content. There's also been concerns raised in the media about OpenAI using confidential user input to update its language models. And this is why a lot of companies are banning the use of generative AI at work, which is probably for the best. For myself personally, I would never use ChatGPT or any related tools for anything confidential. I only use it for fun side projects or for making code skeletons, for example, like the user interface of a Shiny app, but never for anything with confidential information in it. As for the question of whether or not OpenAI is using your input to update its language model, it's really important to remember that ChatGPT is pre-trained. So by definition, the model technically can't update itself based on input that the user provides. But that being said, OpenAI is going to continue creating these new and improved models, and it is stated directly in their terms of service that OpenAI may use your provided data to provide and maintain the services. So what that means is even if something that you type into ChatGPT today isn't going to update the model today, 6 months down the road or a couple years down the road, it's possible that your information was used to train a future model. So never ever put anything into ChatGPT that you would consider confidential or that you wouldn't want to have be used to improve a future model. There are also concerns about the unethical way that ChatGPT was trained to be ethical. So the GPT-3 model was trained using publicly available data, which for anyone who's spent any time on the internet would know that means that it's going to be prone to saying some pretty horrible things. And in order to make ChatGPT have those ethical responses, that means that the model needed to be fed labeled examples of really negative things like hate speech and violence. In order to create these labeled examples of these things, OpenAI was paying workers less than $2 an hour to do this work that was really mentally scarring. ChatGPT is also giving a whole new meaning to the concept of fake news by literally generating fake news. If you ask ChatGPT to provide references or citations for you, it will gladly do that, but the only problem is that these references will be completely made up. It's happy to cite academic papers and news articles that don't exist. It'll even provide you hyperlinks to those news sources, but those hyperlinks don't actually lead anywhere because the information is completely made up. Remember that ChatGPT is pre-trained, so by definition, it can't provide you modern news sources. So if it's sending you hyperlinks to news articles in 2023, that should be a big red flag that the information it's providing you is not correct. Once again, this isn't necessarily concerning on its own, but the problem here is actually that ChatGPT is so confident in providing you with that incorrect information. So when you are using it, really make sure that you verify all the information that it provides to you and you verify with other sources. Something else that's been in the news lately is that there's been class action lawsuits filed against OpenAI and companies like OpenAI for essentially stealing the work of others without the 3 C's. The first C is consent, and that means the consent for the person's work to be included in the training data. The second C is for compensation for the person's work to be used to train the model. And then credit for when the model outputs results that are based off of the creator's original content. Now, this has mostly been about image generation models like DALL-E or similar models from other companies, but this same logic can be applied elsewhere. And it raises a lot of interesting questions. Like, for example, if you post something on Reddit, do you own that post? And do you deserve those 3 C's for that Reddit post? Or what about if you're an author of a book? There's also environmental concerns to think about when using ChatGPT. And although it's really difficult to exactly determine the environmental cost of ChatGPT, some people have tried to estimate this. One way to think about this is about the water footprint. And the water footprint for training GPT-3 is estimated to be around 3.5 million liters of fresh water, which is bigger than an Olympic swimming pool. And if you want to have a 20 to 50 question and answer conversation with ChatGPT, this has been estimated to be about the equivalent of consuming a 500 milliliter bottle of water. If you want to think about things in terms of daily carbon footprints, well, ChatGPT in one single day has a carbon footprint that's estimated to be larger than the carbon footprint that an average Canadian uses in an entire year. And then I've just got this quote here that says, "Any tool can be used for good or for bad. It's really the ethics of the artist using it." And this is very true with ChatGPT. There are lots of great things you can do for society with a tool as powerful as this, but there's also a lot of bad actors out there that could use these tools to do negative things, like, for example, committing crime or fraud or rapidly creating intentional misinformation. So now that we're done talking about the ethical considerations, it's time for the fun part of this workshop, where we start talking about how to use these tools as an R programmer specifically. So here are some best practices as an R programmer for using ChatGPT. As I mentioned before, you always want to use it as a first draft, whether that's generated text or generated code. Always be sure to check your work. Remember that it can provide false information and false references for that false information. So make sure that you're verifying your work with other sources. Remember that details are your friend. When you're writing prompts for ChatGPT, you want to make sure that you're being as specific as possible. For example, you want to tell it the intended audience. You want to tell it the persona that it should take on in its answer. You can also tell it the desired length and format of the response that you're looking for. For example, you can ask it to create like a markdown table, or maybe the format that you're looking for is a social media post. And finally, you want to tell it the information that it should include and the information that it should exclude from its response. You also want to think about word limits when you're using ChatGPT. So the length of the output that ChatGPT creates is pretty much unlimited. So you can ask ChatGPT to produce a response as long as you want, but the input is going to be limited based on the model that you choose, and the price of using it is going to be proportional to that. And we'll talk about pricing a little bit later. And then you also want to remember that ChatGPT remembers what you say. This can be a good thing and a bad thing. The reason why it's good is because you can use this to chain multiple prompts together in order to get the best result. So earlier when we were having that conversation in the browser and we were going back and forth in that chat, that's what I mean by chaining multiple prompts together. So you can tell it that it's incorrect. You can ask it to correct things for you, and that'll usually improve the results that you get. But this can also be a bad thing because sometimes the context that it has gotten so broken and it's gone down a rabbit hole, and everything that it's saying is just not making any sense. So if you find that happening, sometimes it's best to just start fresh with an entirely new chat, and then that won't happen as much. And for part 2, we're going to talk about using ChatGPT as an R programmer, and there's going to be 3 main approaches for this. Before I jump into that, I'm just going to take a quick peek at the chat. Okay. So we'll do questions at the end. Okay, so there's 3 main approaches. So the first one is the browser-based version, which we already saw. And then option 2 is to directly interface with the OpenAI API. And option 3 is to use GPT Studio. Number 2 and number 3 do cost money, and we'll talk about that in just a moment. So if you do want to use options 2 or 3, then it will cost you money. And so the first step to understanding how much money it's going to cost is by understanding the concept of tokens. So there are, there's the pricing for the OpenAI API webpage here. And this is a quote that's just taken directly from that page. So it says, there are multiple models with different capabilities and price points. All of those prices are expressed in the units of per 1,000 tokens. You can think of tokens as pieces of words, where 1,000 tokens is about 750 words. This paragraph right here is 35 tokens. When you sign up for the OpenAI API, you're going to get $5 US dollars worth of credit, which expires after 3 months. So it's sort of like a free trial. You can go to your usage limits and you can set hard and soft spending caps per month to make sure that you don't accidentally spend too much money. So the soft cap is going to give you an email notification, and then the hard cap, as you might guess, will prevent you from spending any more money than that amount. Now, how quickly you go through this free trial credit is really going to depend on what models you're using and how you're using them. And at the end of this workshop, I'm going to show you how much I spent on making this presentation, just to give you a rough sense of how much you can do with $5. My recommendation is to use that $5 free trial credit for a project and really carefully monitor your usage throughout the project in order to get a better sense of how much money you might need to spend in order to use the API for your use case. So now let's talk about those 3 different approaches. So the first approach is that browser-based version, and that's the one that we already saw at chat.openai.com. The benefit for this is that it doesn't cost you any money at all. It's really easy to use because you don't need any programming experience and you don't need an API key, and it provides an aesthetically pleasing experience. Now, when I say that it doesn't cost you any money, the exception to that is GPT-4, which we'll talk about at the end. But generally speaking, the browser-based version is free. The downside is that you have to do a lot of copying and pasting, and sometimes you might get this message right here that says ChatGPT is at capacity right now. That doesn't happen very much anymore. This was happening more when ChatGPT was first released. But if you do see messages like this, then what you want to do is use those other 2 options. So option number 2 is to use the OpenAI API directly. And you can use R to access ChatGPT through the OpenAI API. This is great if you get that ChatGPT is at capacity right now message, and if you don't mind using your free trial or spending money to avoid that message. It's also great when you want more control over the answers that ChatGPT provides to you. For example, if you want to be able to tune parameters or use different models. And it's also necessary if you want to be able to incorporate ChatGPT into a Shiny app. In order to use the API, you'll first need to create an API key. And I'll just leave the instructions there for how to generate one. And then I also just want to make sure that I mention that this is like a secret password. So you should never, ever share that with anyone and never put it in your code directly, because OpenAI can charge you money to your account if somebody else uses your API key, but it also goes against the OpenAI terms of service. So really treat this like a secret password. And in order to use it, you'll first need to set up an environment variable called OpenAI API key. And there's 3 approaches for that. The first approach is to use the sys.setEnv function to define it for your current R session only. You can also put it in your environment file for an R project. Or the third option, which is the one that I use, is you can add it as an environment variable on your computer, and then you'll never have to think about it again. You basically just define it one time, and then it's there. If you're on Windows, the way that you can do that is by searching for edit the system environment variables, and then adding it that way. Once you've defined that OpenAI API key environment variable, you can use the R package called OpenAI, which contains wrappers for interacting with the OpenAI models in R. On the next few slides, we're going to do a really quick roundup of all the things that you can do with this package, but I'm going to focus on the topics that most people are most likely to want to do. I'm not going to actually demo any of these. I'll just show you the code for it, and then you can copy and paste any of these and try them yourself at home. So if you want to have a back and forth chat conversation with ChatGPT, the function that you'll want to use is called create chat completion. You'll specify the model that you want to use here. And then in this example, I'm just asking ChatGPT, what is the meaning of life? You can also create images using the create_image function. You can pass it a prompt, and you can also specify the size of the image that you'd like to create. The output is going to be a URL, and you can then go to that URL and download the image that's been generated for you. I have a video on my YouTube channel that goes over the full instructions for generating images, and it includes information about pricing and going beyond the basics. You can also create transcriptions using the create_transcription function, and that will allow you to convert speech to text using either a video file or an audio file as the input format. For creating transcriptions, The model that you need to use is called Whisper 1. And I've also got a video on my YouTube channel that goes over how to do that in full and some of the considerations and limitations there. Similarly, you can also create translations. And this is the exact same code that we saw on this slide back here, except I just changed the word transcription to translation. Exact same usage. You can use it either on a video or audio file. And then this part is something that I think is one of the coolest use cases, is you can create your own custom models using your own data. And you do that using the create fine-tune function. For example, you might have some data that's in this type of format. And here, this is a movie review that was posted on the website IMDb. And let's say we want to ask ChatGPT to label this as either a positive or negative review. So some sentiment analysis model. We would expect that ChatGPT would label this one as a negative movie review because the person is saying that they're fairly disappointed by this movie. And this example that you see right here is actually a real example from my other YouTube video that I made that talks about how to create your own custom models using the OpenAI GPT models by training it on your own data. Yeah, this video is 27 minutes, so I can't show all the syntax for it, but if you're interested in following along with something like that, this video does go through a full tutorial. Next, we're going to talk about GPT Studio, which is an R package that contains add-ins that lets you work with the OpenAI package through a point-and-click system. That's instructions there for how to install it. And then I'm just going to show some of the highlights of stuff that you can do. So one thing that you can do is correct your spelling and grammar. So you can highlight some text and then go to the spelling and grammar option, and it'll automatically correct it for you in RStudio. And the nice thing about using GPT Studio is that it's always going to tell you how many tokens you used in order to perform the action. You can also turn your comments into code. And as an example, if you write a comment like this that says, create a scatter plot of the Palmer Penguins data set with bill length along the x-axis and bill depth along the y-axis using ggplot, and then you use GPT Studio, this is what it automatically generates for you. So I didn't have to type any of that code. That was all automatically generated for me. There's also an option to use ChatGPT in a Shiny app in the viewer pane of RStudio. Finally, let's talk about GPT-4, which is one of the newer models. And this is a model that OpenAI claims is more creative. It can create longer outputs. It also accepts images as part of its input. It performs a lot better on standardized tests, and it has less ability to bypass the filtering system. So less of that jailbreaking that we saw earlier. In fact, they claim that it's 82% less likely to respond to requests for content that's not allowed. If you want to use GPT-4, there are two options. The first option is to use ChatGPT Plus, which costs $20 US a month. Note that that won't give you API access. Or alternatively, you can pay for the API directly. Now, it is quite a lot more expensive than the 3.5 model. In fact, it's 20 times the price of the 3.5 model if you're comparing the two cheapest options. It's still not perfect. So that question that we saw from earlier of what word is missing from this sequence, GPT-4 doesn't get the correct answer for that either. And this is a real response that it gave me. So there's still ways to stump GPT-4, and whether or not paying the extra money is worth it for you is going to be an individual decision. To get a better sense of how expensive it was to create this presentation, you can take a quick look at my API usage for the month of September. Remember that this only includes the stuff that I was doing outside of the browser-based version. So whenever I was using GPT Studio or anything like that. So in order to make this presentation and include those code examples, that cost me 2 cents expressed in US dollars. I didn't do very much, so that's not necessarily the best indicator, but it does give you a sense that you can at least use that $5 free trial credit to do something interesting, and you should at least be able to figure out how to use the API with that $5. And then just in the last couple of minutes here, I'm very briefly just going to talk about what GitHub Copilot is. So GitHub Copilot is a collaboration between the companies GitHub and OpenAI. Copilot is going to generate code suggestions for you in real time directly within your IDE. It can convert comments to code, suggest what code should come next, show you alternative ways of programming the same thing. And the big difference between these two is that Copilot has a flat rate fee of exactly $10 a month for individuals. So the OpenAI API, the pricing is going to depend on your usage, whereas Copilot, you're always going to pay the same amount no matter what. When you're using Copilot, just like with ChatGPT, always make sure that you're using it as a first draft and you're doing a careful code review. You might be wondering why you should care, and the answer is because Copilot is specifically designed to assist with writing code, whereas ChatGPT is a general purpose language model. And the reason why it's designed that way is because the Copilot training data is entirely based on code from GitHub. So Copilot has a way better understanding of code convention. The integration with your IDE solves the problem of copying and pasting a lot. And I just have this analogy here. It says R is to Python as Copilot is to ChatGPT. And what I mean by that is that R is a statistical programming language, so it's better at statistics than Python is, whereas Python is a more general programming language. So it might have overall a lot of different capabilities, but if what you're looking to do is statistics, then you would often go with R. This is very similar to how Copilot can be thought of as compared to ChatGPT. So Copilot is really designed for helping you as a to write code as a programmer, whereas ChatGPT is more general purpose. There's no Copilot integration in RStudio, so you'll need to use a different IDE. I personally recommend VS Code. And then I've just got some of the common keyboard shortcuts here if you're working on Windows for Copilot. And we don't have time for a live demo during this workshop, but I've also got a video on my YouTube channel that shows you how to set up Copilot and some examples of how you can use it. And that is everything that I have for today. Thank you so much. Okay.
Wow, Mel, thank you so much for an amazing time. And I'm sure that it's not just me that enjoyed this session. It felt like we shouldn't stop. It's a lot of content. Thank you so much. We appreciate. So I would encourage you guys to follow up on our social media panels so that you can get a lot of trainings, a lot of encouragement, especially from our YouTube videos, because she produces amazing educational YouTube videos that you would love to follow up on. I have a question. It's my question actually. It's in the Q&A chat. So Mel, I'd like to ask, have you tried to use Bard at some point, and what do you think about it?
I haven't. I think I've gotten this this question before. I gave a similar presentation a few months ago, and I think, is it true that Bard isn't available like everywhere? Is it only available in certain countries?
Yes. Yeah. It's not available everywhere. So it's getting better and better. Every day. So it's not available currently in all countries, but more countries than it was when it was announced at Google I/O in May. Yeah. So
Okay. Okay,
yeah.
yeah, I should check it out. I think a few months ago it wasn't available in Canada, but that might have changed, so I should give that another look. But no, I haven't tried it yet.
Yeah. All right. Yeah. Because I mean, Bard was one of my baby projects, so I'm very, very curious when I meet people and ask them what they thought about using Bard. That's cool.
Did you
Does
work on it?
anyone have any? Yeah. Does anyone
Oh,
have any
that's so
other
cool.
questions? More questions? Okay, let's check the chart. Da, 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 da. Okay, so I just want to mention something here. So, R without borders is not just meant for R Ladies Lagos and R Ladies Paris alone. If you have an R Ladies community and you need help, support, and collaboration with other communities across the world, you should reach out to me. You should reach out to Mona. Like, we would love to have your community join us for our next event. You should reach out to myself or Mona. We are ready to help, willing to help. So, Mona, over to you.
Yeah, thank you, Melissa, so much for your presentation. Really, so it was really interesting and like very clear. And thank you all for like coming along. Yeah, thank you, Fernanda. I think you are over. It's okay. Yeah, so we make sure to share the recording video later on our YouTube channel and stay tuned for more updates among our activities. Thank you all. Thank you, Evitayo, Melissa, Shaima.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, goodbye. Thank you.
Goodbye,
Thank you so
everyone.
much.